Hey, welcome in everyone. We are back for another really great conversation today. But before we start the conversation, we are going to start in with story time. No, I'm just kidding. Well, Lacy is going to read. She is going to read to us for a quick, but it's not going to be for very long. It's like literally 4 paragraphs. And I know we can handle that. All right, let's settle in, everyone.
That's right, guys. Let's settle in for story time. So once upon a time, there was this amazing little book called Farming Without the Bank.
Canadian version.
It's a Canadian version, your solution to farm finance. And today on the podcast, I want to read the summary to you because I think a lot of people, they hear about this. A lot of times, if we have a couple that comes to us, a lot of times one of the people is really engaged and really the driving force behind looking into it. And the other one's just kind of maybe they're there and see how it goes. So let's read the summary so that if you don't have the book yet, you haven't read it, you're new here, you kind of get the gist of what we're talking about. So here we go. Farming has advanced in many ways, but the way you are financing that farm has not changed for centuries. In order to move forward, you must change the way you think about money, just as you change the way you think about farming practices. Nothing happens overnight. You must be able to look forward years to see the results of what you have built when you're using a whole life insurance policy. The benefits are greater than the wait for huge results. Remember, you are gaining immediate access to money, no loan qualification process, premium payment flexibility during tough times, no more lost interest to the banks, increased profits per acre, tax advantaged use of this money during retirement, leaving a family legacy, ability for farms to stay in the family. So that's what you're gaining. This concept is not an easy one to grasp on the first read. So read and reread this book several times to get a handle on the information being relayed to you. I also encourage you to read Becoming Your Own Banker by R. Nelson Nash. After you have done this, I encourage you to call and visit with us. Advisors all across the country will tell you they know what this is and that they can help you. Yet they have no concept of how to set up a policy for your benefit. Remember, you are the expert now unless you talk to someone else who knows the infinite banking concept. So glad you got to read our book, and we hope you found this book worthy of your time. Feel free to share your thoughts, as we would love to hear them and answer any question that you may have. So, and then we give you some recommended readings, but we also, throughout the book, we give you our contact information, and Mary Jo's is there as well. So you can reach out to us and give us your comments, thoughts, feedback, questions. So I just thought that summary, as I was reading that this morning, that packs a whole lot of powerful information into, it only took me a few minutes to read that. If you have the book and you haven't read it, I hope that encourages you to pick it up. Or if you haven't ordered it yet, what are you waiting on?
Well, I would say yeah, exactly. And, when you say, what are you waiting on? My first gut reaction is to say, and not to have little faith in our humanity out there, but sometimes we operate a little bit better when things are crappy. It takes something, it takes something awful to happen or something that has really negatively impacted your life to urge you to make the change, urge you to pick up the book. But I would say act against that particular nature. And if things are going fine right now, I think most people leave it especially if things are going good. Well, nothing's bad right now, so I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. And I think that could be sometimes one of the key things that prevents people from actually reading the book.
Yeah, for sure. So I met with a couple recently, and they were looking to expand their operation. And in doing so and exploring their options, one of the options that they had was to pay the bank. It was over $300,000 over the course of 2 years, just in interest alone. They knew about whole life insurance and they actually have one whole life policy. But that is what prompted them to say, hey, I've seen this book, I've seen your podcast, I've seen you talk about it. Now I need to know more because I can't stomach the fact that I would have to pay that much money in interest. What would it look like if I kept that money for myself or I built it up in a policy?
Yeah, and that sounds so familiar for many of our now existing families that we serve through Rancher Way. We help, and we really enjoy being able to help strategize and help any operation keep a lot more money in their pocket. Because if you imagine, like, okay, whether you're a smaller scale operation and you're watching $30,000 of your hard-earned money go to the bank versus $300,000, it really doesn't matter. But you have to stop and think, wow, what could I have done with that money? How could I utilize that back into my operation? How much further ahead would I have to be? How much less would I have to work if I didn't have to pay that out to the bank? How much more could I enjoy my life if I could have kept that money instead? That should be a key motivating factor for sure. But you were called to read that summary because you were saying to me, like, you feel like it just packs a lot of punch. And so what else spoke to you inside of this summary?
I think that when we look at those bullet points, immediate access to money. So a lot of times when we think about investing in our future or saving for our future, it's with the mindset, it has to be money that we don't need. It has to be money that we can, and I've heard it said like this, money we can afford to lose. Well, I don't want to lose any money. I want to operate from the standpoint that, well, I can't afford to lose any money because what could that money do for me in my future or the future of my family? Mm-hmm. So immediate access to money and overcoming that, what we've been transitioned to think of when we're saving for our future, I want to say investing in our future. I don't mean investing in the stock market per se, but when we're doing things with our money for our future, understanding that implementing this concept, we do still have access to those dollars. And if we're dedicated and we're strategic, we can still access those dollars, but then plan for that future too. So that's the first point. Mm-hmm. No loan qualification process. So this is like after you have a policy in place, you're practicing infinite banking, no loan qualification. So if you want a policy loan, you need to request a policy loan from your policy. You don't have to qualify for that loan.
You just have to request it. It's just like a...
Yeah, you just, with one company that we use, you click a button and request the loan. And so there's no painful qualification process because if you've ever gone to the bank, and I've said this before, years and years ago when Reed and I went to the bank for a work truck and we were told no, and we had a huge down payment and we were still told no. That was like a kick in the guts. So you don't have to go to the bank and be made to feel like
you don't qualify. Yeah. I think there's been a very few people that I've spoken with that love the qualification process at the bank, mm-hmm. Love it. Or maybe some people love it in the sense of like, well, if I qualify, like that means I got my stuff in order, right? Like
it's like you get your worth from them telling you that
you qualify.
You qualify, right? And then payment flexibility during tough times. Like I know that one of the first episodes of Mary Jo's podcast that stuck out to me was her talking about a client who had bought some bred cows and only could make the interest payments for a certain number of years. And for some reason that stuck out to me, that this client made his interest payments on those bred cows until those cattle were profitable. And then he started to pay back the principal part of it too. So that's huge, or drought. We recently had a client who had lots of cattle to move, but could not get the trucks in the yard to get them out. So their sell day was delayed. And it wasn't just delayed by a few days. Like it was delayed by weeks and weeks. So there lies again, is the bank going to do they care that you can't get the trucks in to get the cattle out? They don't care.
So kind of going back a moment to qualifying to get your money out, or not needing to qualify, like once you have it set up. So a lot of the qualification process, just as a reminder for those who haven't gone through the process yet and you think, oh, this is great. Yeah, I don't have to qualify once I get this in place. Just know that it's worth the effort and the energy to go through the process of qualifying for the financial instrument, which happens to be a dividend paying whole life insurance contract, in order to get to that financial environment that you can experience those kinds of terms and conditions. And sometimes it's so different because whether you're a real estate investor or whether whatever, whenever you're applying for a loan, we all have an idea of what that means. Okay, we have to make sure our taxes are up to date. We have to have a certain amount of money in the bank. We have to make sure that our debt service ratio is at a good ratio so that we can qualify for hopefully the better, having to pay less interest out. And you have to have all your ducks in a row and all the paperwork in order and ready for the banker to sit there and say, okay, do you have enough? Or do you actually really need our money? They're really hoping that you can prove so that they can make that loan to you. What it more feels like when you're qualifying for a dividend paying insurance contract is so different. And it almost seems like it's so much harder because it's not asking for any of those things. It's asking for your health and your lifestyle. And typically you don't think of financially saving yourself by answering health and lifestyle questions, like your health questions or lifestyle questions. So it almost feels very invasive because let's just face it, unless you're a person who has seen a naturopathic doctor, even most medical doctors don't even ask you as many questions as we might. And it could take months for some of you, especially if you have a little bit more nuances with your health and your lifestyle. It could take a couple months. It could take a few months, even to get an answer back. But it's worth it to go through that process to know that you can create a financial environment for yourself that's going to serve you for the rest of your life in a way that's going to make you feel empowered.
Yeah, absolutely. I always say to clients when we're preparing for an application, like, okay, I'm going to rapid fire 100 questions at you. And this is what I need for you to be ready for that. So, we try to prepare you the best we can for those questions. But that is why also this type of policy is better than, you see those commercials on TV. It's like, yo, get $1 million of insurance for $2 a month. Well,
right.
I don't know if it's $2 a month, but it seems ridiculous. But they don't ask you those questions and you don't qualify when you submit that application. So that is, I want to say nothing comes easy, right? So if you are dedicated to, and you think that the outcome of having a policy in place and implementing this is worth that rapid fire questions and us digging a little bit into your lifestyle and your medical history and your financial picture, trust me, I think that it's worth the process that you have to go through. And just like we talked about on a couple episodes ago about the largest farmland owner and how he was saying, the bank wants to know that you're a good business partner. And I liked that point that he made. But so does the life insurance company. Mm-hmm. They want to know that you're a good partner to be partnered on a policy with. And so they do ask questions and they would be silly not to. The next point is no more lost interest to the bank. So just like I talked in the beginning of this episode, how the one family, they were going to pay over $300,000 to interest alone in a span of 2 years. What can we do with over $300,000? What can we do to build the family legacy with that? That's where my mind goes, like, okay, what can we do with that to build that for us instead of make the banks more money?
So many things, I guess, especially when you put it that way in terms of legacy. That could mean so many different things of what's important to each family. It could mean, $30,000 a year. That would be amazing, 2 different trips. It could be a great camping trip, or it could be a great trip somewhere, making memories, creating connection, or it could be starting off one of the younger members of the family with a herd, right? it's limitless
Yeah.
in terms of what else could be done with that money if it didn't have to go somewhere else.
Yeah, for sure. The next point is increased profits per acre. So if we're paying less interest to the bank, that means we're keeping more money for ourselves and increasing our profit. You might want to speak to this one, Winnie. I know that this is something you like talking about, a tax advantage use of this money during retirement.
Yeah, indeed. Because I think at first when people come to us, it's about solving a pain point right now. What doesn't quite often get looked at is the fact that this very same thing that can help you solve an immediate pain point can be the very same thing that helps you to feel abundant and prosperous and a little bit more peaceful into the future, especially when you are like practicing the infinite banking concept. And honestly, where it's like you borrow from yourself, you pay yourself back. You borrow from yourself, you pay yourself back. And when you get into the habit of doing that, regardless of whether you're practicing infinite banking or not, you know that ultimately when you get closer to that time where you're thinking about wanting to relax a little bit more, you know you're going to have more money. But because when you're actually managing your cash flow through a dividend paying whole life insurance contract, and when you're getting into your 30, 40, 50 years into the contract, man, the fact that this is in a tax advantaged asset, like it has its own set of rules, much like an RSP does, much like a piece of real estate does, much like an investment portfolio does. Well, so does a dividend paying whole life insurance contract. And it happens to be actually better rules than a lot of those other things that I just mentioned. And that is because when you get to your retirements, if you're thinking about using this or how can you use this as a way to supplement for your retirement income, well, I guess that could almost be like a whole podcast in and of itself. But part of the reasons why it's tax advantaged is because there's a few different ways that you can make sure you can mitigate some of the taxes without necessarily boxing yourself into a hole where you have to make a lot less money. And a part of it is 100% not advocated by the infinite banking concept or the Nelson Nash Institute, which is having to go to a bank and put your policy up for collateral to use policy as a collateral to give you a loan because you don't pay tax on borrowed money, right? You can do that. But again, if you're a true IBCer, we're not supposed to be doing any business with the banks at that point. But it is definitely...
What would Nelson?
Yeah, no, Nelson would be like, girl, that's what multiple policies are for. So what we also mean by that too is like, I think there's probably a little bit more to unpack there in the sense of understanding the mechanics of a policy is also helpful to understand in this particular point, because when a policy ages, the adjusted cost basis of the contract, like the policy, can grind down to a zero. So taking out a policy loan could trigger a taxable event. But of course, it is not a silent thing. Like a life company will tell you when you do trigger a taxable event, and you do have an opportunity to prevent that taxable event happening by paying whatever the requested amount is for your policy before December 31st, right? Or you can turn around and again, take your policy and get a loan from the bank instead and prevent that from happening altogether. But there's other ways you can use younger policies. If you practice IBC, you'll have other policies that are younger. And yeah, like I said, I think it's an episode in and of itself, unless you want to expand on that a bit more, Lacy.
No, I think that's good. Yeah, because it can be its whole episode on its own. Leaving a family legacy. So this looks different for everybody. Most people want to leave a family legacy. There's so many different ways this can work out. Like maybe you have 1 or 2 children coming back to the farm. You have an off the farm kid, but we need to do something for them. There are some people who I feel got in on the planning long ago, and they have life insurance policies set up for those off the farm kids. Because, the one that's coming back to the ranch is getting all the work too. Like they might be getting the ranch, but they're getting the work. Here's another thing that's come up lately. What if you don't have any kids? Then what? What if you have no kids that are coming back to the farm? I spoke to someone earlier this week where it's nephews coming back to the farm because there are no kids to pass it on to. So then there's things that look different in that form of leaving a legacy. And that gets into, you can open up a whole can of worms with that one, with the capital gains and, tax implications and all of that. But what does a family legacy look like for you? I think that is a question that our readers can ask themselves before they come to a first meeting, is like, what does a family legacy look like for you? And do you want to leave one?
And sometimes I think for those individuals who don't necessarily have immediate family, to leave that behind too. I also feel like those individuals sometimes think about who can they give to charity, which is also very meaningful, or how can they reach out to whoever's in their community that would best steward the land after. It really just depends. But in the meantime, I think any individual or any family, I think their first main thing is like, how can they do their best to prosper in their operation that they are building? Or how can they use their operation so that they make sure that they have enough, more than enough, while they're aging into the next world?
Yeah, and for sure. The last bullet point was the ability for farms to stay in the family. So this is a hot topic, I think, all the time, but recently more of a hot topic, because if you're ranching, cattle prices are high, land prices are high, they continue to go up. So it's not penciling out. How can we keep the ranch in the family if it's not penciling out? My mind goes to, you see those family businesses, family owned and operated for 100 years or 50 years or whatever. And it's like, that did not happen without some sort of strategic planning. And it's no different for farms and ranches. Farms and ranches are not in the family for 100 years or more without strategic planning. And so that's a whole ball of yarn in itself, because what do we do? What do we do with the older generations? They still have to live. I always say that. Like, what do we do with mom and dad? They're still alive. So, like, we got to talk about this and we got to plan for it, because you can't just kick them to the curb.
Definitely not. I was listening a little bit to a Warren Buffett podcast, and Warren Buffett is like, I think he's probably, I think most of us know Warren Buffett. Like, he doesn't brag about the fact that he has wealth. He just creates it. He's probably one of the most humble, wealthiest people that are out there. And he was talking about how he's in his 90s now, and looking back, what kind of wise words does he have for us? And he didn't actually really get super wealthy until he was 50 years old and beyond. And he was sharing a part of his information with us. It's like, look, he can see where a lot of people went wrong in terms of not creating abundance and wealth in their life, like later on in their years. And a part of the mistake that he sees individuals making over and over again. So like, if you're heading into your 50s, I think a lot of people in the 50s kind of figure out how to play the game a little bit more. They're a little bit more comfortable. They have more things, like assets and things in their life at that point. And he shared that you want to prevent, as a person in your 50s, by giving too much of your money away to your kids, paying things for your kids and not getting them to pay back because you now have extra, right?
Right.
He said that's probably one of the most contributing factors of where wealth can dissipate and go wrong for people growing into the latter part of their stages of their life. So just thinking about, you can still help, but when we're really exercising the infinite banking concept, it's about how can you create a family pool of money where instead of going to the bank, if your kids need something, have it come out of your policies and help your children, but make them pay it back, because then there's more to borrow from when they come back. But don't just give it to them.
Yeah, that's interesting. I can see where that can be something that begins to happen once you start getting more freedom in your finances. I can definitely see that.
I think it's really interesting because it's almost like an emotional dopamine hit for, I think, a lot of parents. It's like, oh, we're like at that stage and we can give this to our kids, and it makes us feel like amazing parents, and it makes us feel like we're
successful.
Yeah. Like
Like, I didn't have that, so I'm going to do this for my kids type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I can see that.
Mm-hmm.
So I just thought the summary was, I mean, I know I've read the summary before, but as I was looking through the book and digging, be like, what is really good? I'm like, that summary is really good.
Mm-hmm.
It gives you just enough that you want more.
Yeah.
Like, okay, what is this? So I thought it was powerful and that it was something that we needed to talk about. And to reiterate, this concept is not an easy one to grasp on the first read. So read it and reread it. And even after you read it and reread it and you have a policy in place, it still takes time to grasp.
Mm-hmm.
It still takes time and some reminders and really being in your policies and putting them to work for you and utilizing them before you can fully grasp it. And there's always something to learn.
Absolutely. And I would say, like, especially the case study section. If you're someone who hasn't done anything yet and is just trying to figure out, how is this going to, how does this fit in our situation? Hands down, I guarantee if you go over that case study section a few times, once you're able to sit down with us, we can get to the brass tacks of your situation so much quicker because you have the concept weaved into your imagination so much more than someone that just reads the book once. So what's next? What's next, Lacy?
Well, show. Okay, if you are new here, you can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or you can head over to our website. That's where you're going to grab your book, ranchyourway.com. So you need to read the book before you can have a meeting with us. And what's really cool is that we now have the audio version. So head over to ranchyourway.com, grab your bundle, and happy reading. We will see you down the trail.
So glad you leaned in with us on the Winnie podcast. We truly hope you're feeling more informed and empowered to take another step towards optimizing your financial life. Right now, make sure you hit subscribe so you can keep growing and learning with us. Until next time, we wish you prosperity in every area of your life.